think ever since I was a young fan of science fiction movies, I've always been very interested in the concept of what happens when this planet is invaded. And over the last 4 or 5 decades, Hollywood has invaded planet Earth dozens of times. But War of the Worlds, sort of touches a nerve in the sense that it really is about more than science fiction. It reflects a lot of our post 9/11 fears, but it also reflects another impulse that we really are human beings and we do come together to help each other survive, especially when we have a common enemy. Action. When I was growing up, I remember watching both in movie theaters and later on television films like The Earth versus the Flying Saucers, It Came from Outer Space, Invaders from Mars, This Island Earth, certainly the original George Pal version of War of the Worlds. And I always was very interested in the fact that these films came out in response to our fears about the Soviet Union and a possible nuclear war someday between America and the Soviets. And those films were analogous and very metaphorical and preyed on our fears of being attacked from another country. Also being attacked from the sky, nuclear missiles raining down on America. Now, in the shadow of 9/11, it felt that War of the Worlds had a special significance. I mean, this film touches mostly on how this much catastrophe can bring about that much healing. But, our world has gone through a lot of growing pains, and we're in a whole different mindset. So, for the most part, I think I made the picture because I thought that this story's time had come again. Say Tom, and look at the side of the left. Right there, that's all I need. That's perfect.
Put it right on there, right?
Yeah.
Minority Report was a dream come true for me to be able to work with Steven Spielberg. I grew up watching his movies, studying his movies. I often tease him, I know your movies better than you do. But we'd finished Minority Report, and we sat there and we said, okay, so what are we going to do next together? And he mentioned 3 movies, and War of the Worlds was the third one, and we both looked at each other, and the lights went on, and we said, that's it. There was, tremendous excitement, and then that day we just put it together and said, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to make this movie together. And then Steven's worked with David Koepp before, a great writer, and I've worked with David Koepp before. And the 3 of us just sat down in January and talked about the story. And I wanted to play a father in a movie and have, a character. I like the, blue-collar character. I lived in Jersey twice. And David Koepp just really rolled with that.
Actually, the first conversation we had, I remember I took a lot of notes as I was reading the book, and one of the things I did is I made a list of all the things I felt we should not have in the movie. And if we could agree on that, I thought it was a big step toward making the movie in a fresh way. Because alien invasion scenarios have been done before. We've seen the first War of the Worlds and a number of others. So we made a list of things that we wouldn't put in the movie. Things like no destructions of famous landmarks, no shots of Manhattan getting the shit kicked out of it, because enough already with that. No shots of generals standing around a large map pushing ships with big sticks into place. No TV news cameras, no news crews out photographing destruction and then being destroyed by it. We just went through all of what we thought were the cliches of the genre and vowed not to do those, because what that left us with was trying something that was a truly first-person account, which is what the book is. I think the genius of Wells' book is he doesn't try to tell everything that's going on in the world. He sticks almost exclusively to his hero's experience and what happened to him and what it felt like from his point of view.
This isn't one of my movies where suburbia is invaded by benign, benevolent extraterrestrials. This is really more of a story, less about my own upbringing in suburbia and more about a kind of working class existence and how this kind of deadbeat dad, I hate to use that word, but he's a little bit negligent toward his kids. He's a divorced man. He hasn't seen his kids for 6, 7, 8 weeks since the last visit. And when his wife finally says, look, you're taking him for this weekend because I've got to go see my mother in Boston, this tremendous cataclysmic event happens, which is very informative, you know, as to who Tom Cruise's character really is.
Where's my son? Where's my son? Cool down, man.
The world is basically coming to an end, and what is he going to do? That challenge of a guy who has really only thought about himself, and now at this point he has to become that friend. He must become that parent, or they're not going to make it. It's you know, the story is, are they going to make it?
Robbie! Robbie!
Robbie, come down. Pass him the other way, Robbie. Come back.
You know, great science fiction has tremendous characters and is still relevant. You know, when the classic pieces of science fiction are still relevant because it hits universal human themes.
It is a cautionary tale, in a way. You know, we're far more dangerous to ourselves than the, you know, huge extraterrestrial invaders. It's quite profound. And therefore, what's in your heart and what's in your soul, and your family and your children, and being the best father or mother or brother or sister that you can be. That's what counts.
I think this film, like Close Encounters and Private Ryan, is very hyper-real. And I think that's where, if we play our cards right, it's going to have its most profound effect in affecting an audience, and truly perhaps unsettling an audience, in that it is being played for the hyper-reality. And then into this reality comes something that is beyond the imagination, that is, you know, very scary to look at, and certainly, you know, almost impossible to imagine. So we imagine it for you, and this movie's been a real trip for me. It's the first time I've really, you know, jumped with both eyes open and both feet directly in the center of a science fiction horror film.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, now let's try something that doesn't involve your 10-year-old sister joining the army. You got anything like that?
Why don't you just tell us the truth? Oh, you have no idea.
You can't handle the truth!
I love working with Tom Cruise. This is our second time working together after Minority Report, and having known each other for many, many years, just as friends, it's brought a whole new evolution in our relationship as director-actor, and also in our relationship as friends. That never changes. But, you know, he brings a real life to this character. And he brings tons of, oh, what if we did this? What if we did that? And that really fires me up and gets me thinking. And I think, in a sense, we just sort of spark each other.
I know, I can do that.
Can you heat your body lighter?
More peanut butter.
That would make it.
Yeah.
Clean up. Yeah, again.
There is nothing better in this world than creating. And when you have the opportunity to create with Steven Spielberg, it's very exciting. He creates at a high velocity. It's very fast, very accurate.
I need you back at 4 instead of 12. I got half a Korea coming in at noon.
I can't. I'm on a 12-hour blow. Call Tedesco.
Oh, come on. Tedesco can't move 40 containers in an hour. I need somebody who can do double picks.
I really wish I could help you, Sal.
I really wanted to look at somebody from a lower middle class perspective, you know, and also I knew it would be Tom Cruise. I wanted to try and work against his persona a little bit.
You know what your problem is, Ferrier?
I can think of a couple of women who'd be happy to tell you.
And so I started thinking about the sorts of roles he's played, and I thought, well, what if we took the characters that he'd played early in his career, say from All the Right Moves, even Top Gun, and what happened to those guys 20 years later when it didn't work out the way it was supposed to. I was thinking of approaching him like one of those characters in a Springsteen song who got married too young and got a job he hated and just got stuck in this go-nowhere life that was making him miserable. I just thought that would be a fresh perspective, and then it would allow us to shoot interesting environments. You know, I wanted to have this sort of Rust Belt America look to the thing, and so I made him a dock worker so that we could, you know, end up in these really industrial environments that would contrast our technological primitivism with the invaders' incredible technological advancement.
Well, you know, I said to Tom when we first started working on this project, I said, Tom, I really want to make a movie where your character isn't the hero, but he's running away. And his larger agenda is, how do I keep my kids safe? And Tom was really game for that. I mean, he was excited that he didn't have to, you know, put on an army helmet and go to war. The only war that he was going to fight was, the war to, keep his family safe.
Just like this is your area, Rachel. You are safe in this area.
Do it again, but overlap him, Rachel. Overlap him this time. Cut him off.
I feel that he sort of emerges forth, sort of out of this humdrum, day-to-day sort of empty existence, and that he ends up being this tremendous hero, I think, and how to do that with costumes without it being over-fashiony or, that it could be a normal, regular guy. So probably the most important piece of costume in the film is the jacket, so the jacket which Ray wears. And there was an original jacket, which was a Honda jacket, probably from the 60s, which came from a man I knew who lent me that jacket, and I used that as a sort of base. And then his was black, and I didn't want to do black. I wanted to do something more interesting, because I think black is used quite a lot in leather on film, and I just wanted a different kind of mood. So I chose this sort of slightly eggplanty, aubergine-y kind of brown, and we made in excess of 60 altogether. So it was a big production, but I think the jacket takes the lead, and then everything else is, he has 2 T-shirts layered on top of each other, and then he has a hoodie and jeans, and then he slowly peels off his sweatshirt and one of his T-shirts, and then that's a sort of reveal down, and then you get more to the feeling of the body coming through. So that's what I feel is about the emergence of the hero.
It's like the on the Weather Channel, they say go down to the basement, there's a tornado, and for safety. It's like that.
There's gonna be tornadoes?
Dakota Fanning was on my mind the second I decided to make War of the Worlds, because I had already indirectly worked with her when I produced Taken, and then she had done Cat in the Hat for Universal and DreamWorks, and then she was on her way to making a feature for DreamWorks called Dreamer, and so it was just bound to happen. Ask him where he's going so I can get that next line out.
Sure, yeah, I'll just do it right, yeah.
And I think Dakota Fanning is the best juvenile actor working today. I know no one her age today who's better than she is, and more intuitive about human nature. I mean, she thinks with an adult's heart, and her character is, in certain instances, a little wiser than her own father, and that made for some interesting interplay.
What?
That's not how you're gonna get through to him. You want him to listen to you.
What are you? Your mother? Or mine?
To work with Steven Spielberg and Tom Cruise in the same movie, and Tim Robbins and everybody. It's just, I can't actually believe that I'm actually working with these, legends.
Can I see it? Let her play this kind of game. See? Yeah. Don't let her. Dakota, don't let him touch your wrist again. Where'd you get it? Yeah.
This movie is unlike anything I've ever really done before. It's action and, special effects and everything. And so I've never really done this kind, and it was really exciting for me to get to do this kind of movie with Steven and Tom, and I've really learned a lot from them about this genre of films.
It's okay. You're fine.
It hit right behind our house!
I know, but it's not going to hit there again, okay? Because you see, lightning doesn't strike in the same...
Dakota Fanning is enormously talented, just innately just talented, and very bright, fun to be with too. I'm a father, and I've always loved kids. I was a camp counselor growing up, always wanted to be a father, and I believe that you don't talk down to children. You involve them in, they're human beings.
Every time a guy goes in there, give me a scream, okay?
Talking to Dakota, she's just so much fun.
Right in my ear.
Both of us worked so well together.
So Rachel, I thought she was just sort of archetypally sort of perfect, girly girl. I made her a camouflage vest, but it's in pink. It's an early, totally unconscious preparation for war. But she's really the barometer because she's the brightest. So you see the change on her the most because she starts so perky and then she becomes absolutely trashed.
My character is very much of a worrier and kind of hysterical. And so I have my little horse right here for comforting purposes. And so anytime my character gets worried, she's always clutching to her horse, which we've named Wilson.
We nickname it Wilson you know, after Wilson the Ball in Castaway, because it was such an emotional attachment, so it was always known as Wilson.
A little bit longer this time. With the back window too, like that, with the back window too.
Justin, very talented, and came on, and I thought it was beautifully cast.
Is he starting there?
Yeah.
He's starting there.
I looked a long time for somebody to play Tom's son, but when I met Justin, he came in, he tested for us a number of times. I liked how natural he was, how American he was, even though he's actually Canadian, but he has this sort of American teenage, you know, voice. He's in the rhythm of the times today.
Yeah, I just gotta type it up. Bullshit. Yeah? What do you know?
And so there was a lot of different factors that concluded that Justin get that part, not the least of which he's a very talented new young actor.
Well, the first thing was like, I started, you know, trying to piece together who Robbie was in relation to his father. I just went by the library and I was looking through different books and just grabbing anything that caught my eye off the shelf. And I saw this book on 9/11 and all those photos that were there with the people covered in ash and the, you know, the apocalyptic world and state that everyone was in, and how it unified everyone in New York at that time. And it was so similar, and I told Stephen that, and Stephen was like, yeah, I have all those photos up all over my office, you know. And I was like, wow, yeah, you know, so it's a similar thing, you know, what happened at 9/11 and how it unified everyone to be one instead of be all against each other and hate each other, you know.
Robbie is about style of youth, you know. He had that sloppy, sort of faddy thing going on, and I suppose in a way I wanted him to be the kind of quietest. So tonally he doesn't change that much, but the one really linking thing between Ray and Robbie is the hats. They're supporting different teams, so it's part of this rivalry between them, and that Robbie would come to the house wearing his hat to piss his dad off.
Boston. That's how it is? Is that how it's gonna be?
We'll be at my parents' house in Boston. But don't call the house line, you know. Well, the point is I've got my cell phone, so if anything comes up or you have any questions, just call me.
Believe it or not, I can't handle it.
I'm a fan of Miranda's. She's a wonderful, wonderful actress, and I've seen her in a number of films. My kids are fans of hers from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, certainly. And so, you know, I just thought she was a good fit with the Tom Cruise character. And I thought she was a good fit because I thought that Tom may be married up, that he was this blue-collar worker. You know, he's a big kid at heart. And he probably, you know, he's a sexy guy, and he probably married up. He probably married a Connecticut aristocrat, and they fell in love and had a couple of kids. And yet there was such a great chasm between their upbringings that they never really could see eye to eye on many things. Or maybe she wanted him to be more involved in the family, and he was too much of a kid himself to do that, and the marriage failed. But there's a sort of sweet gap between Ray and Marianne, and I kind of thought Miranda did a great job playing a well-educated woman of good upbringing. And she was not slumming to be with Ray because he's this sexy dock worker. He's Tom Cruise after all. But she's found something in Ray she loved, but she also was holding on to this other lifestyle. And I thought that contrast was great.
I was in LA and I was in a car rental place, and my agent rang me, and I didn't even know that I'd been put up for it. I was in LA for a week for something else that I had to finish off, and my manager rang and she said, I need to talk to you, and I said, oh, can I call you back because I'm just hiring a car, and she said, no, I have to talk to you now. And she said that Steven Spielberg wanted to talk to me about coming to do this, and it was completely out of the blue for me. And I got to speak to him the next day, and he asked me if I'd be interested in doing it. But the funny thing is that I'm actually pregnant myself, and so I had to say to him on the phone, I don't know if I can do this because I'm pregnant. I don't know if that's going to be a problem for you. And he said, oh, no, actually I like that. That's a good idea. Let's do that. And I'm not actually this pregnant. They've made me a little bit more pregnant than what I am.
What's happening?
I can't tell you now.
We've only got about another minute.
Next to the screenplay, there's nothing more important than the proper casting. You're offering the audience people to bond with, to identify with. And one of the things that I love about War of the Worlds is it doesn't have a complexity. If anything's complex, it's the characters.
The notion of the tripods being buried in pods underground was Stevens, and I think that when you're working in a genre that's been well explored for decades, you just don't want to do what everybody else has done. And I think he just probably was thinking, well, they always come from space, so he just said, well, what if I go the other way? What if they come from underground? And then you work with it from there. A lot of times, a lot of your thinking starts with, what if I go the other way?
I want to show you this interesting thing.
Well, Stephen definitely had a few things in mind when he came to me with the brief, and it was, you know, the 3 legs, definitely, that it has to be a tripod, and it has to be able to do certain things. There were certain things in the script, and most importantly, first, was to look scary.
I wanted the tripods, number one, to be really scary, because they're going to represent what's driving them. And so I wanted the tripods themselves, I want the audience to say, okay, it's just a machine, let's get to what's inside, let's see the aliens. I wanted the audience to actually be terrified by what these things look like from the outside. So I had the most amazing group of computer graphic artists working on the design of the tripods.
And we went back and researched all of the wealth of design interpretations that have been done today. And part of it was to be conscious of what had been done, but also to steer away from that because we wanted to create something new and unique. And one of the great things that Stephen wanted to do was to create something that was iconic, but yet still paid homage and tribute to the original story. And so the whole idea of 3-legged was wonderful because then you had to start thinking about, well, why did they make it 3-legged? You know, and so we had to think about different biology, different physiology of why they would perhaps make it like that, because obviously for us, we're sort of bipeds and quadrupeds. And then once you kind of do that homework, then it's really a matter of designing something aesthetically pleasing that looks and addresses sort of what the story needs are. And so in some ways, you know, working closely with ILM, we would do some design, they would do some designs, it would dovetail together. Stephen would basically give us feedback on what works and what doesn't, and then we'd go back and we'd do our own interpretation, and it just kept going and going and being refined.
The original ideas that we had discussed about was that the tripods were pretty much mechanical, and they are mechanical. They're not a living thing at all. But as we got into it, started animating them and looking at them, they become a little more lifelike in their movements.
I remember seeing the designs of the tripod and going, wow, looks like a Sherman tank atop these, you know, long, spindly, flowing legs, and picturing it in movement, these legs in a graceful flow it's almost like watching a giraffe, and you're not realizing how much ground it's actually covering because you're hypnotized by this wonderful motion. And then contrast that with, it could be lethal at the drop of a hat, you know, with the tentacles and everything. So I thought it was a wonderful character in that sense.
The lights coming off of it, the size certainly was all from the book, and we just took it there as a starting point and really made it able to act and react with its environment and with the human actors, basically.
The tripods had 3 legs, and so 3s are a guideline for how we were designing most of the things. So there were like 3 eyes, 3 limbs, 3 fingers, and the aliens, of course, were 3-limbed, or just some odd, you know, configuration. And it really made it compelling because just the fact that you have 3 legs dictated a different kind of movement and a different kind of form. So the tripods in themselves, I think, will become very iconic in terms of what the aliens are. Just the fact that there are 3 symbolizes the difference between our culture and theirs.
It has a kind of terrestrial buoyancy in the sense that it is walking on the earth and there are laws of gravity, but yet it has this kind of flow to it that is essentially aquatic. And there's a lot of aquatic characteristics of the tripod, such as it's almost like a jellyfish atop, the long legs underneath. It has the tentacles of like a squid or an octopus. So all these things, again, it's on the land, but it has aquatic characteristics.
Stephen kept saying these things move like really scary ballet dancers. So interesting, like you don't normally think of a monster moving like a ballet dancer, and that dichotomy gave me something to push off of and kind of, you know, shape the way the design went.
What we did is we took the animatic model and we started doing some development. This is sort of putting the tripod through its paces, deciding what the range of motion would be, and really finding sort of the bookends for what Stephen was looking for. And you can see on the legs, we really had to decide how bendy they would be, you know, what started to look almost too animated and not heavy enough. The next step is then to rig the character. And what you see here is all of these colored controllers. The animators will move over time to animate.
The animation on this is pretty important to give a sense of sort of amazement and danger and humbleness to these creatures. Like there's nothing you can do, they're there, they're in control. You know, that's pretty neat that comes across in the film, and Randy's been really good at getting that in the animation and all.
Yeah, this is actually the walk that Stephen really liked. He felt that there was a sense of weight and heaviness to this, and also a nice organic sort of fluid motion to it. We did go a little more towards creature-like look.
You know, the birds, that was an idea that I heard from Stephen, which I thought was wonderful, that there was, you know, that all these birds kind of were following these war machines because they symbolized death and they were creating death. And so these black birds were almost like vultures, scavengers, and so they foreshadowed the images of death. And I thought it was a wonderful way of doing all of that, but yet still getting a sense of drama, because you don't know if these birds are going to the danger or away from danger and whether you should follow or run away. And it was just great because in an image, it sort of strikes fear in you without really knowing why, but you're reacting to it.
Look at the goddamn birds!
The moment when the war machines actually die in the movie is one of those iconic images that I grew up with. You know, I love seeing those things. And I think it's one of those wonderful images because it reinforces that you don't have to change our reality much to make it fantastic. And by introducing these gigantic war machines half crashed into a building, kind of automatically gives you a very stunning icon. And so, you know, there are many ways to do it. And of course, you know, I think it's always best to go with the simplest, which is to have the machine there and then just, you know, treat it with real careful lighting, real careful staging. So it becomes a very surreal moment where you're seeing this very horrific thing, but yet it was an image that gave hope, hope for humanity.
When we first started developing E.T., it was a much edgier, darker story that we were telling, and it actually evolved into something that was more benign.
Well, Martians is not mentioned in my film because my aliens don't come from Mars. Our aliens come probably from as far away as E.T. came from, except they came from a darker part of the universe, whereas E.T. came from a rather benevolent planet.
The aliens have gone rogue, you know? They're rogue alien. It's E.T., man, but he's gone bad, you know? E.T.'s gone bad, he's rogue.
You know, I don't try to psychoanalyze what is on the aliens' minds, except that they're bent on our total extermination. They just want to eliminate us from existence, and they probably have plans for our planet themselves, but we don't go into what's their motivation. We just basically experience the result of these nefarious plans to supplant us with themselves.
They're malevolent. You do not want to run into these aliens.
We must have had 20, 30 designs on aliens, from the sublime to the ridiculous.
You know, Stephen said that, you know, these aliens grew up perhaps in the zero-G environment, so there's really no up and down. But yet we had to make them so that they looked intelligent. They're not just beasts.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. We're an independent company, and we appreciate all of your support.